This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, and we have a very important show for you today, my friends. We're going to be talking about Bill C-36. This is a new piece of legislation that is being introduced that essentially seeks to redefine hate speech. But on top of that, perhaps even more sinister than that, this actually seeks to incentivize cancel culture, which is completely draconian. And joining me on the line right now to help us understand all of this is Derek Sloan. He's a member of parliament based out of Ontario, Canada. Derek, thank you so much for joining us here today on Press for Truth to talk about this important issue. I know you've been covering Bill C-10, which is, I guess you could say, currently on hold, which is also a bit of an internet censorship bill. But we now have this new bill, and I want to get into some of the more draconian pieces of legislation, issues there, underlining issues. But before we get into that, maybe we could just start with what was your initial reaction when you heard the introduction of this bill, when you first read the bill? What was your first take on this one? And then we'll get into the nitty gritty. What was your initial reaction to the introduction of the bill?
Yeah, I mean, it's very surprising. Initially, I remember when Stephen Guilbeault, the Heritage Minister, was doing some interviews telegraphing what the Liberals wanted to do generally on his file. He was he said something along the lines of, coming up with some kind of basically censorship platform, and then they walked that back in the news, and then all of a sudden we're seeing the very bill that they've been telegraphing, kind of quietly for some time. So. This is a very troubling bill, and it's really leading us into that 1984 Big Brother world that is kind of all upon us here all of a sudden without us even realizing it.
Yes, exactly. They seem to do these things incrementally, which is, we've seen bills being shut down before: CISPA, PIPA, SOPA, ACTA. They constantly try to rebrand these things so that they can move it along down the road. Now, this one is largely to do with hate speech, essentially trying to redefine what that means. Can we get into that a little bit? I mean, first of all, how can hate speech even be defined? And where do you think they're going to take this thing?
Yeah, well, it's really tough to define. And frankly, what this will end up doing is it will be used as a political tool to silence basically non-liberal dissent. So, I can pretty much guarantee you that if someone wants to say something, absolutely awful about the Queen or about, European settlers or about Christians or about any other, thing like that, I don't think anybody's going to get in trouble for talking about things like that. Where they will get into trouble is someone maybe raising alarms about radical Islam, raising alarms about, things on the left that are sensitive issues. And those are the types of people that are going to, someone espousing, traditional views on marriage or sexuality, but, maybe in a more, rough-edged way than maybe you or I would or something. But, Canadians need to be able to speak their minds, and they need to be able to debate ideas. And the government should have a political tool that, can be used to penalize people for that.
And it seems like people can quite literally just have their feelings hurt and then notify the authorities to have you shut down. I mean, isn't there a need to defend the right to be offensive? What do you think about that? Should the right to be offensive essentially be defended in this country?
Yeah, so absolutely. And so on a general principle, I completely agree with you. Specifically, on this bill, even if someone didn't agree with that, on this bill, there's a lot of troubling things here. You can get in trouble, for example, before you've done something. You can be. They have this peace bond that can be placed on someone through a court of law, where a variety. I mean, they can test you. They can tell you can't drink alcohol anymore. They can take away your guns. They can test you for these things. They can tell you where you can and can't go, who you can be with. If someone goes to the court and says, I think Dan Dix or Derek Sloan is going to post something that is hate speech, the court could potentially do all of these things as well. So this kind of pre-crime thinking, I mean, you can't really do that with pretty much anything else. I mean, if someone threatens you, I mean, that is in fact a crime, and you can go to court for it. But this type of thing here is it seems to be more draconian possibilities with this than with almost any other crime. Like, I mean, you couldn't do all of these things for someone, if you thought they were going to kill you. You know what I mean? I mean, you could ask for, you could ask for, I'm forgetting the word here. You could ask for a restraining order and things of this nature. But this sort of extreme, detailed, taking away, all these different things with the testing and all this. It seems to be, some of the most severe things available, and this is for posting online content that the government censors don't like. So it's a very extreme situation.
Wow, this is like a futuristic sci-fi movie where you can essentially be held accountable for something you haven't even done yet that you may
Yes.
potentially be doing in the future.
Yes.
That's absolutely insane. I have heard that there's talk of actual cash rewards for people who do want to come forward and lay out these types of complaints against people. Can you explain a little bit about the incentivizing of cancel culture with this bill?
Yeah. So what happens is that if somebody brings forward a complaint, you don't even necessarily get to know who they are. So the tribunal has the ability to block you from knowing who your accuser is. Okay, so that's problematic at the get-go, because one of the cornerstones of Western society is to be able to know who your accuser is. Even if you're witnessing against, organized crime or something like that, more often than not, you have to, they may put you in the witness protection program, but you still have to testify on the stand as Dan Dix or whoever. But in this case, you don't know who your accuser is. The tribunal can offer up to $20,000 in damages to a victim of this. So if the person that brings forward the complaint is the victim, that they could get compensated. If they're not a victim and just just notice that this happens, then I suppose they might not be able to get compensated. But there is this sort of compensation. There's also an additional fine of up to $50,000 that they can levy on you if they feel that the gravity of the situation or whatever other characteristics warranted that goes directly to the government. So it is bizarre, and of course, in the tribunal situation, you don't have the same protections you have in the court of law. You don't get costs if someone brings a fallacious complaint and you win. It's not like they pay you for your time or for your expenses. You don't get to know who your accuser is. It's not the same procedures that are there in a court are not present in the human rights tribunal situation.
Wow, this is unbelievable. This is actually far worse than Bill C-10, which is essentially being put on hold. They're going to kind of rediscuss that in the fall. But what's the timeline on Bill C-36? When can we just expect to essentially kill the bill, or when might it potentially be passed?
Well, it has only been introduced in the House of Commons. It hasn't had any voting on it yet. So right now, it wouldn't come into law until we're back in Parliament again in the fall. Now, there could be an election before that, which would definitely put this bill on hold. But again, if Trudeau wins, this is exactly the type of thing that we could be seeing post-election.
Mm-hmm. Well, hypothetically, let's say this thing does pass through, or it's on the brink of becoming law. Are there things that people can do to protect themselves as a hedge against censorship? I mean, I know with myself on my platforms, I've been taken down on YouTube and given it back. And so I've been migrating my audience onto more decentralized platforms, ones that are kind of blockchain based, ones that are a little more censorship resistant. That's just one method that I've taken. Do you have any words of advice for ways that people can hedge themselves against the potential coming censorship, especially those who are of the conservative viewpoint or Christian or what have you, who may be under attack in the near future? What can people do to protect their free speech?
Yeah. So I'm actually not a technical expert per se, but I'd imagine that on some of these platforms, there's ways to, post things so that people don't know who you are. So I don't know if that means you have to block your VPN or something like that, but I'd imagine that you could post something on, Telegram or one of these other, Rumble or things like this, so that people don't know who you are. So if you can't be identified, you couldn't be charged under this thing here. So I mean, that would be one piece of advice I would give. But hopefully this bill will never see the light of day. and hopefully Canadians will wake up and see what's going on here.
Yeah, well, the only way that's going to happen is if they realize there's a problem in the first place. So I think perhaps at this stage in the game, it hasn't even been voted on, so maybe awareness is absolutely key. This is the point of this video today. So if people want to, I know you're going to be covering this as it continues all down the road here. So if people want to follow you, I know you have a Twitter, but where's some of the best places you think that people should go right now to follow all the updates for Bill C-36?
Yeah, well, I mean, if people aren't getting my emails, they should, because that's something that's not going to get shut down by Facebook. So if you go to my website, dereksloan.ca, and you subscribe to my emails, then I can always be in touch with you. So I recommend that people do that. As far as, there are other people speaking very strongly on this, Ezra Levant, Andrew Lawton, other people like this at Rebel News, True North Media. So, these are good people to follow. There's a great interview that Andrew Lawton did with Ezra Levant, who was actually charged under kind of a similar law to this, but not nearly as sort of aggressive, 10 or 12 years ago, in regards to publishing those Danish Muhammad cartoons that drew that stir there about 15 years ago. He published them here in Canada and was brought before the Alberta Human Rights Tribunal at that point. So that whole interview that they've done, I recommend people watch and just keep looking to see new things that come out.
For sure, awesome. I remember that. I remember that interrogation. Essentially, that was pretty wild. Yeah, great advice. I'm strongly going to encourage people to sign up to the email. Get on that mailing list, guys. You're not going to want to miss out on this information moving forward. It's absolutely crucial. It's crunch time. It's beyond crunch time, guys. We're in the thick of it right now. So please check the links in the description below. Get involved. Get your voices out there so we can kill this bill and stop this thing. Once again, Derek, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us here today at Press for Truth.
Glad to be here. Thanks so much, Dan.
We all want truth. The truth will set you free.